Hi, I'm Sammy Jo Diffendaffer, and I am a couple and family therapist practicing in Frisco, Texas. Um, I wanted to take some time to address one of the big questions that I get a lot about therapy, and that is kind of what is this therapy thing really about? Um, I think because of the confidential nature of therapy itself, um, clients, even my family and friends, they're kind of left with this big question mark around what really happens in the therapy room. You know, maybe we're left with our best guess being influenced by the movies that kind of show that person laying on the couch and clutching a pillow, maybe screaming into the pillow to let out some anger. And while I don't want to knock it or say that that's never helpful, I will say that that's not typically the approach that I use. Um, I use a type of therapy that does deal with emotions. It's called emotionally focused therapy, EFT for short. And I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about how that model works for now, how it works with couples. Um, if you have questions about how it's different, um, works differently for an individual or family, it basically is the same, but I just don't have time to address all three. So for my couples, one of the big messages that I would want to send all my couples is that I don't believe in good, bad people. I don't believe that people typically ever do something sheerly for the sake of being bad, if that makes sense. Um, I believe more so that we do things out of our humanness, our emotional responses. By humanness, I mean the fact that we are kind of an emotionally responsive system. Um, and emotion, I think, gets a bad rap, so to speak. I think people will kind of, I guess, dismiss someone as, oh, well, they're just being emotional. Um, and I mean, yes and no. I think that gets kind of misnamed sometimes because emotion is something that every person has. Um, we all have an emotional responses because that is actually the thing that helps us stay alive. It's that thing that tells us we need to be afraid when there's a big giant grizzly bear behind us and it's showing its teeth and rearing up on 2 feet. Um, our emotion, our fear, is what sparks us to either fight, to get our weapon ready and kind of prepare for battle with the grizzly bear. It prepares us to run and try to get away from the situation and flee, or it teaches us and it kind of sparks us to just freeze and hope that that grizzly bear finds something else for lunch. So that's what emotion is. But what you're likely thinking about when you think of someone who seems emotional is how a person responds to their emotional trigger. So just like with the grizzly bear, that can make us very quickly feel afraid and kind of that rush of adrenaline and that anxiety that goes up for us. That actually happens in our relationships. Um, and it's more difficult because it's not so obvious that we're having a response to something because it's not a grizzly bear we see. It's kind of this unknown of something my partner did or maybe repetitively does. Something makes me feel very afraid that they might, makes me feel abandoned. It makes me feel like I didn't matter, um, or like afraid that the day would come to where I didn't matter enough for them to stay. Um, and so I think when that happens, actually, not what I think, but what the model says about when that happens is that very rarely are we sharing with our partner, hey, this is what's going on for me. I sometimes feel um, like I'm not good enough. I sometimes feel kind of rejected and pushed away. I sometimes feel so afraid that I start to wonder if there will come a day where you don't even want to stay anymore. And we those things are so hard to share, especially if we're at a place where we already feel hurt. Um, what we typically do instead is the fight, flight, or freeze thing. Um, we may throw a dagger at our partner for what they did to make us feel unimportant or rejected or abandoned or like we didn't matter. So we may fight. We may try to just kind of close off and not respond in any way. We just kind of maybe feel stuck or petrified, but really we're on the inside terrified and anxious and really starting to wonder what's going to happen next. So we can do that, or we can get so angry that we can't even stay in the same place. We feel hurt and we feel betrayed, so much so that we leave, either physically or kind of emotionally. We leave and we shut down. So that is kind of a summary of what emotionally focused therapy is all about. It's about identifying some of those soft emotions and how those emotions sometimes come out in a way that puts us more so at odds with our partner than it does allow us to connect with them and share what's really on the inside for us and what our deepest pain and fear is in the relationship. So when I think about how EFT, what I would want couples to know about what they can expect outcome-wise from therapy, the big goal for me is to create healing that happens it's not surface level. It's kind of this deeper healing that allows couples the ability to solve all their problems. So maybe you and your partner have a tendency to fight, particularly around finances or particularly around in-laws or intimacy and what that looks like for you guys. But really, if we're able to truly get to the bottom of how you connect as a couple, then my hope and kind of the idea of emotionally focused therapy is that you would eventually be able to solve all of those problems as a team. So it's really amazing the work that can be done when a couple teams up and is able to stand beside one another even when they don't agree. Every couple is going to have disagreement. So that's, to me, that's not necessarily indication of the strength and the bond of a couple. It's more so about how a couple can team up in the midst of adversity or stress or very big differences of opinion. And couples who can establish that connection and that security to know that even when I stand in disagreement with you, there is no doubt in my mind that you would ever leave or that you would reject me. There's no question that regardless of how different our opinions may be, that we would ever not stand together. A couple who can do that, that is a couple that can solve a number of issues and some of the most difficult of issues. So that is my hope about what therapy could offer you. And to me, that's the ultimate goal. And so hopefully that gives you guys a little bit better of an idea of how I operate, kind of how I conceptualize couple problems as a whole, and what you might hope for in doing this therapy thing. So I hope that if you're thinking about it, that you check it out. You can contact me. You can look into other therapists who may provide a different technique. It's really more so about finding the right fit for you. But that's just a little bit about me, and I will check back in with you soon. Thanks.